What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show. It's Monday, October 24th, 2016, getting to the end of the month, 1 week away from Halloween and our annual little extortion racket by the little kiddies. You know, give us candy or we'll do something to your house. So, anyway, we've got that to look forward to. Tomorrow is 2 weeks away from the election, so we're going to be talking about that an awful lot. We have a lot to cover on the show today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. Ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And we have got all this breaking news. The closer we get to the election, the sheer volume of revelations, exposés, leaks keeps on going up. And O'Keefe came out with his latest Part 3 video, and he reported initially that YouTube was trying to block him from uploading it. And when that went all over Twitter, then all of a sudden the technical issues at YouTube went away. And this latest video confirms Hillary Clinton was personally involved in the dirty tricks. And that right there, I mean, this is completely out of control. She's just openly contemptuous of election laws in this country. Now, because of the O'Keefe videos and a lot of the information that's come out of WikiLeaks, Donald Trump is actually filing a lawsuit against Clinton. He's demanding criminal charges for violation of the Felony Mob Act and sending in people to disrupt and threaten Trump's rallies. That's a violation of Title 18, Section 594. It's illegal to use brown shirt tactics in this country. So he's filing a lawsuit, which is going to persist. Poll coming out of ABC, no less. It's an online poll, not one of their massaged, let's make Hillary look good poll. ABC ran an online poll. 93% of Americans say Hillary Clinton should be criminally prosecuted. And I imagine the 7% are working for the Democratic National Committee, the White House, or for Hillary Clinton. Now, WikiLeaks is teasing the next release, saying that they're going to go after specifically Clinton advisor Joel Benenson. Now, he's Hillary Clinton's chief campaign strategist. He's the one who thinks up the dirty tricks, and they're going to be going after him. Now, some of the leaks coming on out are confirming that the Hillary campaign was behind things we have been seeing going on, including a deliberate plan to discourage Donald Trump supporters with bogus corporate media polls and endless declarations that the election is effectively over and Hillary has won, and that's all you need to know. Remember, the New York Times actually did that last week. I'm sorry, Washington Post did that last week. The election's effectively over. Hillary is it. You might as well stay home. And this is all being orchestrated out of the Clinton campaign. Now remember, we have caught repeatedly the corporate media skewing the polls in Hillary's favor by oversampling certain demographics. More Democrats than Republicans, more women than men, more blacks and Latinos than those of us who are pigmentally challenged. That, too, came right out of the Hillary campaign. Now, the latest revelation, everybody's screaming about Russia's hacking Podesta's emails, Russia's hacking, right? No evidence Russia did it. In fact, there's no evidence Podesta was hacked. Apparently, he was very careless, and he fell for an email phishing scam and leaked out his own login credentials that allowed somebody to just come on in and find out what was there. And, of course, Hillary's campaign is out there saying it's Russia, 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 Russia. We have 17 U.S. intelligence agencies who are telling us it was Russia. Well, actually, no. When you go back and fact-check Hillary Clinton, which is a survival skill, there are only two intelligence agencies, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Homeland Security, who've even expressed an opinion on this issue. And what they're saying is it's ambiguous who did this. So once again, Hillary Clinton is lying to you. I know that's not exactly newsworthy headline material here. How do you know Hillary Clinton is lying? Her mouth moves and words come on out. Now, there's a new stink coming out of North Carolina because apparently she put in a video at put in a visit at one of the early voting sites and was caught on video, literally electioneering right next to the polling place. That is a violation of campaign law. You are supposed to stay a set distance away from the polling place. And they've got this picture of Hillary, and she's standing right next to the sign indicating the door to the polling place. And Hillary's own campaign describes the visit as a campaign stop. You are not allowed to campaign at the voting locations. But again, Hillary thinks the laws do not apply to her, because Obama's going to pardon her if she loses, and she'll pardon herself if she wins. Now, WikiLeaks has come out with a new bombshell about how the Democratic super PAC, Priorities USA, and they've spent $102 million fighting Republicans, and they are coordinating with the Hillary campaign. It is against the law for a campaign and a super PAC to collude or coordinate or cooperate on any level. Super PACs get the tax breaks that they get by operating independently. They're not supposed to be part of the formal campaign. She's been caught red-handed with yet another campaign violation. Another revelation coming out of WikiLeaks is apparently the Clinton Foundation doesn't pay its bills, and it's been stiffing its own contractors as a routine business practice. We don't have to pay you. We're the Clinton Foundation. If you complain, we'll just smear you in the media, or you'll wind up dead in Fort Mercy Park. We're going to take a second here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And again, another report coming on out saying, in point of fact, U.S. intelligence agencies do not think Russia had anything to do with the DNC hack. Julian Assange said it was not Russia. It was an inside leak, and he implied strongly, without saying it, that it was Seth Rich who wound up murdered. Now, Trey Gowdy is close to going postal over all that's been going on. He's just angry with the FBI, and he's come on out publicly saying there is definitive proof that Hillary Clinton knowingly violated Title 18, Section 798, unauthorized disclosure of classified information. Comey's entire justification for letting Hillary skate was they couldn't prove she meant to do wrong. Well, Trey Gowdy is saying, yes, we have the evidence she intended to break the law. So exactly what is it that's constraining the FBI? Is it orders from on high, meaning obstruction of justice? Is it that mutual linkage of blackmail over HSBC drug and terror money laundering that they were all tangled up in? As it turns out, the political organization of Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, who's a longtime Clinton associate, gave almost $500,000 to the election campaign of the wife of the deputy FBI director. And this deputy FBI director was part of the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's email use. You see how the corruption just keeps going and going and going. It's worse than the ever-ready bunny. The corruption just keeps going and going and going and going and going and going. Now, there is a story that came out of a YouTube video saying that insiders in the government have reached their breaking point. And there is a report, and again, I'll believe it when it actually happens, that FBI insiders are going to start leaking information that was collected during the investigation but withheld from the American people, including Hillary's 33,000 deleted emails, which are all supposed to be about Chelsea's wedding and yoga classes and all the rest of that. And if even just one of those 30,000 emails is government business, we have her on perjury yet again. Now, Watergate's Bob Woodward is out there saying what we already know. The Clinton Foundation is totally corrupt. It's a scandal. It's not a charity. It's a slush fund masquerading as a charity to allow under-the-table payments to cronies of tax avoidance. Meanwhile, Michael Moore came out with this rather quick hack job. Michael Moore in Trumpland. He shot it over a period of 11 days. And it pretty much cratered. And maybe that's the reason all of a sudden he's out there saying all these controversial and offensive and provocative things. Michael Moore is calling everybody who supports Donald Trump a legal terrorist because Trump's election will blow up the system. And you voters who vote for him are participating in the destruction of the system. Yeah, Mike, that's exactly what we're doing. We're sick and tired of the establishment. We want to bring it down. Trump is our last hope for a peaceful revolution in this country. And then Moore went on trying to compare Trump to a pedophile, saying voters have to protect America from the GOP nominee the way children should be protected from child molesters. I mean, that's a bit of a reach. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Vince in Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I've been going to your site since approximately 2005, and I don't know if anybody has mentioned this to you, but in the last 2 years, when I've gone to your site, some of the articles, I click on to get the articles, I've gotten a virus from the articles.
Well, unfortunately, the articles are on other people's servers and outside my control. And I try and keep an eye on the problematic servers. But the fact of the matter is the U.S. government is allowing all this malware to run rampant because these criminals are making money and they're making donations to the appropriate politicians. The NSA is doing absolutely nothing about it. I'm trying to keep my own personal site and server as clean as I can. In fact, starting about a month ago, I stopped accepting new advertisers because I expected somebody would try and advertise on my site to plant stuff that would harm my readers. But unfortunately, I don't have any control over those remote articles. And all we can do is if you mention a specific headline to me, I prefer you email it so I can deal with it off the air. But if it's a specific story you clicked that gives you that, then I can contact that person and say, you've got malware on your site. But the malware is completely out of control, apparently with the blessing of the United States government.
Yeah, generally it happens on sites that deal with economic issues. Like, for example, if there's a site that's going to, if there's an article that says, some company that's going to close 20 stores, that's where my experience, it's likely to happen.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, if it happens, hang on. If it happens to you, send me an email with the specific headline that you clicked that provoked that response. Without that, I can't hunt it down here. I mean, I've got huge security on my system, so I never see this stuff.
Okay, I will. Next time it happens, I'll email you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Now then, pardon me, I'm still fighting a little bit of a respiratory issue. And by the way, we're going to have some comment about that later in the show, about Claire and I having this chronic cough that seems to go on forever. We think we've found out what the cause is. You will be surprised. Now, as you know, all these women coming forward to say, oh, Donald Trump assaulted me 30 years ago, and for 30 years I kept telling everybody what a wonderful guy he was, and then all of a sudden, when I'm in serious financial trouble and the Hillary campaign is going to help me out, all of a sudden I had a memory come back that Donald Trump touched me. And already everybody is spoofing this. I have gotten no less than 16 variations on the theme of a cartoon of a kitten saying, Donald Trump touched me. This is like everybody's out there making fun of this. So the latest one they're coming out with, this is over in the Daily Mail, okay, and there is a porn star who has now come forward to say that Donald Trump offered her $10,000 to have sex with him. Okay, now this is a porn star. She's not saying that Donald Trump assaulted her or forced himself on her. The whole story here is that Donald Trump, if you believe this story, and by the way, I don't, but the whole story is Donald Trump offered this woman money to do what this woman does for money, except without the cameras and lights around. I mean, that's how desperate they are to try and find something that's going to stick to Donald Trump. And I think it's going to backfire because certainly the men in this country are dropping this whole political correctness nonsense. They're probably out there cheering Don on. Yes, he got to nail a porn star. Haven't we all dreamed of doing that when we watch porn movies? Now, one of the most dangerous indicators coming on out, we know that George Soros is out there playing God with our planet. In fact, George Soros is treating our entire planet and all of its people the way the guests treat the hosts in Westworld. That's how out of control it is. And apparently at one point he was out there actually saying that he believes he is a god. He actually wrote at one point, I fancied myself as some kind of a god. I've carried some rather potent messianic fantasies with me from childhood. That's what he's out there. He's out there playing God with our world. He thinks having lots and lots of money gives him a right to mess around with our planet, our government, our nation, our lives. No, he doesn't. He's not an elected leader. Okay, we're going to take another phone call. Rick in Fort Lauderdale. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, huge fan of the show. A long time ago, AMC, the TV program, the people that have The Walking Dead, they had a show called Rubicon. I don't know if you ever saw it. It's everything that you speak of about how, like, the false flags, how the back door, how they make money off it. It was amazing, and I cannot find it anywhere. And what I was thinking was, if we can resurrect it, a lot of the sheeple could watch this, and they would be amazed, and they would wake up to all the stuff that's going on.
Well, my guess is because of the content, it may have been banned, and most people don't realize it. There is actually a ban list in the corporate media. If you're my age, you remember all the wonderful anti-war songs that came out in the 1960s, and Clear Channel and these other conglomerates actually have these lists that go out to their radio station saying, you will not play these songs, which is why all we get are all of these modern sort of feels like rock and roll with totally banal and pointless lyrics that all sounds the same, to the point where we're just turning off those radio dials. But there are songs, TV shows, movies that are just not being allowed out there right now.
Well, hopefully on Election Day, you can wear that red shirt that you're wearing now, because that is great. I love it.
Yeah, somebody actually sent this to me. It actually calls itself the Mr. T shirt because it's got a silhouette of Mr. T on the front of it. But yeah, I've gotten a couple of red shirts in the mail so far, and yeah, I'm going to wear them. I'm not wearing them every day. Every day when I leave the radio show, I'm out there wearing my Hillary for Prison T-shirts. And right now the reactions to those are running about 10-1 in favor. You know, every once in a while I'll get this rather pinched-faced, you know, feminist woman who thinks all the men want to rape her and nobody would want to touch her. And she'll come out there and say, we need Hillary. We need a woman in the White House. We got to do this. Somebody actually sent me a whole box of these buttons that say Hillary for Prison, and I always have them with me, and somebody will say, I love the button, I'll say, great, here, you can take it. And I've gone through almost all of those. The reality is, and this is a Democratic state, this is a solid blue state, and for every one person that disapproves of my Hillary for Prison t-shirt, I'm getting 9 to 10 who think it's just great, and they're laughing and they want the buttons.
And lastly, thank you for educating us on the John Badell case, because I fear that George Soros is going to get away with his maniacal scheme if we can't have a citizen's arrest on him. So I just thank you for fighting the fight that you do.
Well,
you make all the difference in the world to me.
Well, I certainly hope I'm making a difference here. I'm going to be very unhappy if Hillary steals this election, because Hillary is going to do exactly what Bill did, going to spend the first 6 months cleaning house, and a lot of people are going to be targets. As for George Soros, if we get to the point of guillotines, and by the way, there's this comedian who did this rock video of a song, It's Time for Guillotines, and it's funny as all heck. It's on the front page of What Really Happened. I figure we ought to save George Soros to the very, 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 very end when that blade is really, really dull.
Well, thank you for being you, and thank you for fighting the fight. You're my life preserver. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and we're going to let you go here. Thank you for the kind words here. Now then, as you know, one of the big issues the corporate media is trying to conceal from you all is the relative size of the crowds who show up to to Trump's rallies and to Hillary Clinton's rallies, and the corporate media is under orders. Tight focus on Donald Trump, never show the crowd. So we're going to take a break for commercials. When we come on back, got a little story to share with you on that very topic. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. So over at Wilkes-Barre, Donald Trump's giving a presentation in a sports stadium, and all the media is there, and he dares the media to pan the cameras around to see the audience. And only one independent outlet actually does it. And they're panning around, and the stadium is just full of people, and they're all shouting, CNN sucks, CNN sucks. And this camera pans past the other corporate media, who are just standing there steadfast with their cameras pointed, narrow field of view at Donald Trump. They are literally under orders to never, ever, ever let anybody see how big his crowds are. And it's very, very obvious. Donald Trump is chastising them, and CNN actually cut the camera, went away to commercial. Now, over at Investment Watch blog, somebody put together a compilation of all these times on CNN and MSNBC where their guests are starting to criticize Hillary or talk about WikiLeaks, and all of a sudden, oh, there's a technical failure. The mic has gone away. And when you do it a few times, maybe, but when it becomes an epidemic, it becomes very obvious that's what they're doing. They're censoring their own guests to protect Hillary Clinton. Either that or the hardware over at the corporate media is just now falling apart. Now, one of the What Really Happened readers, one of the What Really Happened readers in Los Angeles sent photos of a large demonstration of blacks and Latinos along Hollywood Boulevard. They're up at WhatReallyHappened.com. They are supporting Donald Trump. So this idea coming out of the corporate media and the Hillary campaign that the blacks and Latinos are all for Hillary Clinton, it is just not true. And the leadership of Black Lives Matter really nailed it. They came on out and said, Hillary is saying absolutely everything we want to hear, and we have absolutely no guarantee she'll ever keep her word. And so there was this huge protest over the weekend, demonstration rather, on Hollywood Boulevard of blacks and Latinos in support of Donald Trump. And you're never going to see that on the corporate media. Now, there's this gentleman, Professor Helmut Norboth, and he has a model that he has been using to predict elections, and he has correctly picked the results of every election since 1996. And he is saying there is an 87% chance Trump will win. Now, that's assuming an honest election, which we know is not true. Right now, 60% of Republicans are convinced illegal immigrants are voting. 43% are convinced that dead people's names are being used to cast illegal votes as well. Everybody is now on to the scam. Now, Pat Buchanan was over on CNN, and CNN is still out there trying, oh, our elections are trustworthy. Our elections are completely secure. Oh, look at all those wonderful little computers. I mean, that proves it. And Pat Buchanan just uncorked on them, saying, of course it's rigged. You don't know what's in those electronic machines. We have lawsuits still flying over the primary fraud that was going on. We know dead people are registered to vote. We know dead people are, in fact, voting in the early elections. We know the illegal immigrants are being registered to vote. They're voting in the early elections. It's completely out of control, and the corporate media is out there trying, oh, no, you're just dreaming it here. CNN's Dan Marica is out there telling her there's nothing to see in WikiLeaks. You don't want to read anything from WikiLeaks, especially that one WikiLeaks email confirming that Dan Marica is actually working for the Hillary campaign. Don't read that one at all. Just believe as CNN tells you to believe, because that's what they get the big bucks for. We're getting more reports of voter pamphlets dumped in the trash. This is over at Berkeley. These are voter information pamphlets that were supposed to be mailed out to Republican voters. They were found in a trash bin. And by the way, I want to put out a call to Rivero's Rangers. Whenever you see any voting irregularity, gaming going on anywhere, send it to me so we can post it and keep it out there in front of the eyes of the American people. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're getting yet another story coming out of Illinois, where they're already starting the early voting. And it's already being discovered. Votes being cast for Republican candidates were being transformed into votes for Democrats. Oh, but it's just a glitch. It's a calibration error. It's a mistake. Really, that's all. And yes, all these glitches and snafus and mistakes and calibration errors always seem to benefit Hillary, but they are just glitches, snafus, mistakes, and calibration errors. And if you think otherwise, you are a traitor, wingnut, wacko conspiracy theorist who hates democracy and needs to be sent to the re-education camps. It's almost to the point like they're not even trying to hide it anymore. They're out there just saying, we're going to steal this election, you might as well get used to it. No, under no circumstances. Newt Gingrich is out there screaming about the election fraud that's going on. There's a huge probe into election fraud going on in Texas, another one in Indiana. And ever since Donald Trump has gone public saying this system is crooked, his poll numbers are going up because everybody knows he's right. Now, over at UC Berkeley and Stanford, they did a study of the primaries. And they said that absent the election fraud, the odds that Hillary Clinton won the primaries, the Democratic primary, honestly, is 1 in 77 billion with a B. In other words, Berkeley and Stanford are saying the only reason Bernie Sanders is not the Democratic nominee is Hillary stole the nomination, and if she's stealing the nomination, she's going to try and steal the election itself. Now, just when you think the New York Times cannot sink any lower than it already has, they ran an article Saturday titled, What Nixon Could Teach Trump About Losing. Now, of course, they completely skip over what happened back in 2000 with Al Gore and George Bush, and they went back to the 1960 election where Richard Nixon squared off against John F. Kennedy, and John F. Kennedy won, and everybody does understand that, yes, John F. Kennedy cheated, a lot of help from organized crime. And the New York Times article is all about that. Even though Richard Nixon knew he'd been cheated, he did the right thing for the country, and he stayed silent. That's it. Now, this tells us the thinking over at the New York Times. They support Hillary Clinton. They know the fraud is out. They know we, the American people, know this election is crooked. And so they're trying to sell you the message that no matter how obvious it is the election is stolen, we should just go along with it for the good of the country. Now, we don't actually know why Richard Nixon did not challenge the presidential election. He may have been afraid of the fact that the Kennedy family was tightly tied in with organized crime going back to Prohibition. I personally know he was very angry about it because he used to come up and hang out with my grandfather in the years afterwards, getting drunk on wild turkey and screaming about them Kennedy boys. So it was not an easy choice that he made. Now, I have a different point of view, and I would hope that you will all adopt it. First of all, there is no law that obligates anybody to accept the results of an election where fraud is known to have taken place. It's just not there. Now, I maintain if a government cannot prove the accuracy and honesty and fairness of the elections by which they claim authority over the people, then we the people are neither legally nor morally obligated to obey that government, pay its bills, and certainly not to sacrifice life and limb of our children in that government's wars. The original contract with America is that we the people give our consent to be governed to leaders of our own choosing. If we are not actually choosing our own leaders, that contract is broken, the consent is withdrawn, and the government is illegal, unconstitutional, and wholly illegitimate. And the fact that the New York Times would actually come on out and say, even if you know the election is stolen, you should just go along with it for the good of the nation. Shame on the New York Times. That's not democracy. That's not protecting democracy. It's protecting the illusion of democracy. And I would say the New York Times has hit rock bottom, but they actually went past that months ago, and they're headed down for the core of planet Earth right now. We're going to take a phone call. Andy in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I appreciate you, man. You're absolutely wonderful information digest, if you will. No, really, it's very brief, very quick. I just wanted to say on the local Fox channel where I'm at here in Texas, they had this little scroll underneath the line. It says that Hillary is making preparations for moving into the White House. It just blows me away that they've actually said that basically by saying that it doesn't matter what Donald Trump does. It doesn't matter who votes for him or whatnot.
They're trying. Yeah, that comes right out of the Podesta emails. Have the media tell everybody that the election is effectively over and Hillary has won and just get used to it. And by the way, if anybody from the White House staff is listening to this show, if Hillary is making preparations to move into the White House, start bolting all that furniture to the walls and floors right now, or you're never going to see it again.
Exactly. That's all I had for you, my friend. I just thought it was weird that this local Fox channel, which I mean, even the local news now is just is ridiculous as far as what's really going on in this country. But I just thought that was just particularly to me that was assaulting.
I'm beginning to think the real reason that they got rid of Roger Ailes over there at Fox and so Murdoch could take direct control is that Ailes was too sympathetic to Donald Trump. Because ever since that transition, Fox has definitely moved away from supporting Donald Trump into supporting Hillary Clinton. And by the way, if anybody from the White House staff is listening to my show, send me a coffee mug as a souvenir because the odds of me ever actually visiting the White House are astronomical. But I wouldn't mind having one of the coffee mugs. I'll send you one of my coffee mugs in exchange.
Hey, well, you know what? You're a spectacular individual. You're a treasure trove of information. I love the way you prepare your information. Yeah, I know you say a lot of stuff over and over again, but that's the best way to get people to realize. Because, if you just keep reporting stuff as it happens and whatnot, and then you don't ever reinforce what's going on, and you do repeat a lot of stuff, and I just think that's a spectacular idea for your program.
Well, that's something I learned from advertising. Reach and repetition. If you tell somebody something once, it doesn't stick. You do have to repeat.
Yeah, and you're doing a fantastic job, Mike. I just want to commend you on that, and I just wanted to throw that little tidbit at it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the news, and the corporate media is absolutely shameless, but if you really think about it, from their point of view, they're fighting for their continued survival and profitability, because if Donald Trump is able to overcome the election fraud, if we, the American people, are able to defeat this corrupt, fraudulent establishment and put Donald Trump in the White House, the corporate media is going to go through a seismic shift. Because the rich people and corporations who back them do so only on the premise that the corporate media can still convince the American people to think up is down, black is white, left is right. And if Trump wins, the corporate media is going to be proven to have lost the war for the minds of America, and the rich corporations and individuals who support the corporate media, which is losing money hand over fist, by the way, with the advertising, they're going to put away their checkbooks. And all those talking heads, all those blonde girls in the skimpy clothes, all the prostitutes and the correspondents are going to have to learn how to live without those $1 million paychecks.
Well, but do you watch those Sunday shows? Because, when you watch them Sunday shows, when they break away for a commercial and stuff, they got Boeing, they got the pharmaceutical companies, they got Microsoft, they got all these different people that are supporting them when in fact they're just out there telling a bunch of lies. But, the thing, I'm just beside myself. I can't believe I'm in this country right now. I'm happy to be here because I am God's warrior and I will do what I have to do when the time comes to do it. So I just want to say I appreciate you keeping me informed, and that way I know what the date and time is for me to get motivated and get busy. You know what I'm saying?
It's here and now, right now, this second. If you're not already decisively engaged, then you're already too late. I have a question for all of our listeners to consider. How do you feel about the United States of America right now? And then understand the rest of the world's opinion is probably a little bit lower, and it taints you. Just something to think about. All right, Andy, we're going to let you go. And
okay, appreciate it, sir.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. Thank you for the phone call. Now, again, the evidence for election fraud is overwhelming. The lawsuits are piling up all over the primaries. They're starting to have investigations into the early voting for the general election. It's completely out there. So what do you think the Clinton campaign and the establishment are going to do? Stand up there and say, you caught us, we're rigging the elections? No, of course not. I couldn't believe this when I saw it coming out. This was in the Daily Mail. Their newest spin is Russia is faking the evidence of election fraud to discredit our democracy. And this is coming from unnamed and anonymous U.S. officials. So the plan apparently is to have Hillary steal the election and dismiss the tsunami of evidence of election fraud as an evil Russian plot by Vladimir Putin. It's the Russians who are planting all this evidence to frame poor innocent Hillary. And if you believe that one, I have some of Saddam's nuclear weapons to sell you. Now, as you know, under various international treaties, nations are allowed to send observers into other countries to monitor the elections. And Russia very generously offered to send observers to monitor the upcoming American election. And apparently, some officials in swing states like Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Texas are saying not only is Russia not welcome to oversee our elections, if they show up, they will be arrested and thrown in jail. Now, for those of you who are following David Duke, who is running for Louisiana senator, he's qualified to participate in the upcoming debate. He's got enough support, enough votes behind him where he's actually going to be able to participate in the debate. Now, let's talk about the war zones. Okay. Hillary Clinton is already out there talking about a no-fly zone in Syria to protect the poor civilians in Aleppo who are being trapped in Aleppo by the U.S.-backed terrorists. So if you really think about it roundabout, the U.S. is using human shields in Syria. That is a war crime. But obviously, a unilateral no-fly zone by the United States is going to put the U.S. on a direct collision course with Russia. And we may find out the hard way just how good those Russian planes are compared to like the F-22 and the F-35 and the F-15 and the F-16. It's a mistake I don't think we want to make. But I mean, that's what the U.S. is doing. The U.S. is having their pet terrorists keep the civilians in Aleppo so the U.S. can say, oh, we have to have a no-fly zone so that Russia and Syria can't bomb Aleppo. It's patently transparent what they're doing. They're using those civilians in Aleppo as a human shield. Now, Israel has announced they plan to buy 3 new German Dolphin-class submarines. They're diesel-electric but capable of carrying nuclear weapons. You get 3 guesses who's going to pay for those new submarines, and the first 2 don't count. Now, turning to the economic news, Caterpillar retail sales have declined for 46 consecutive months. Worst month for North America since 2010. Now, you would think with all the demolitions going on in Israel, Caterpillar would be doing very well, but you need to understand Caterpillar's business is not solely dependent on these armored bulldozers that Israel uses to destroy Palestinians' homes. Caterpillar equipment is used for construction, and construction is slowing down all across America. And that's why Caterpillar is in trouble. When you look at some sector of the economy that gets in trouble, it affects other areas. When a car maker goes out of business, all the other companies that were supplying parts to that auto factory, they get into trouble. It's all linked together. Now, as you know, there's still a huge debate in Europe about maintaining the U.S.-mandated sanctions against Russia. At the last word, Italy is vetoing it. Germany's not even waiting. They're just openly defying U.S. sanctions against Russia. They're doubling their investment. Why? Because Russia, like China, knows how to make things. They've got factories. In fact, an ironic twist of the economic war against Russia, Russia has been forced to become more self-sufficient. They're growing more of their own food, all GMO-free. They're building their own factories to build what their country needs, and now those factories and those products are very attractive economic investments for other parts of the world. Now, over in Britain, the BBC is still out there trying to find ways to convince the British people to abandon Brexit and remain slaves to the European Central Bank. And they had this show Question Time, and they featured this Polish woman who was just conveniently in the audience about how the Brexit vote has made that her feel that she's no longer welcome in Britain. And apparently the audience just started booing her. It was a pathetic piece of propaganda. And you know something? People are getting the courage. When they know they're being propagandized and lied to, they have the courage to stand up and react. And you all have to do the same. Whenever anybody in the corporate media or politician stands up and feeds you a line that you know is bovine excrement, we have to have the courage to have 300 million Americans stand up and say, we know you're lying and we're just not going to listen to you anymore. The French police are still in a state of protest. They are still out there saying they do not have the resources to deal with the exploding refugee crisis. They can't keep the peace. They can't protect the French people. They can't even protect themselves. So they're out there doing a protest saying something has to be done about this. Let's close the borders. And, of course, the government is saying, oh, no, the borders are open. This is all going to be wonderful. We don't just understand why you're all not hugging each other and singing Kumbaya around the campfire. Now, apparently over in Great Britain, there was this family, a foster mother who took in what she was told was a 12-year-old refugee who turned out to be 21 years old and a jihadist who responded to her generosity by threatening to kill her and her kids. Now, not too long ago, there was this big stink up in Austria over an Iraq refugee who raped a 10-year-old boy at a swimming pool. And he was arrested and charged and convicted. And now a court in Austria has overturned the conviction, saying that the rapist may not have been aware that the boy didn't like being raped. Apparently the thinking is because the refugee didn't speak English, was never told he should learn English, he didn't understand the boy when he was screaming, "Stop shoving your genitals up my sphincter!" We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're talking about immigration and all of these problems. Apparently up in Oregon, there was an illegal immigrant, previously deported, snuck back in, and got hired to work at a middle school. He's just been arrested and jailed for molesting the students. So tell me again what a wonderful thing this open borders, New World Order society is going to be. These stories prove Donald Trump is right. We have a legitimate need and a right to control our borders, to say who will and will not come into this country, so that those who come into this country are a benefit to our society, that they're not rapists and child molesters and drug criminals and worse, carrying contagious diseases. Even in the heyday of U.S. immigration back on Ellis Island, we still had Ellis Island. Everybody coming into the country had to go there first and be vetted and checked for illnesses. They didn't just say, walk in across the border from Mexico, come on in from all these other places around the world. This is George Soros' idea. And it's not working out very well. Now, as you know, there have been a string of box office disasters coming out of Hollywood, mostly based on reselling us old propaganda about why the Russians are bad, why we're good, and they have not been doing very well. And the latest one is called Denial. And this was a movie about the lawsuit filed against David Irving for saying that there was compelling evidence to question the orthodox story of the Holocaust. And this movie documents the trial to say, see, he deserved to be slapped around. Now, they put a huge budget into this thing. The production values are high, A-list cast. The director wasn't really very good. And inadvertently, the character of Mr. Irving comes across as formidable and knowledgeable. And interviews of people who've seen the movie show that they're saying, there might be something here. People are all of a sudden curious about the Lochta report, about whether cyanide was really being used there. So Hollywood is cratered again. Remember, time makes ancient truth uncouth. No great hoax or propaganda survives indefinitely. And we are in an age where some of the greatest lies in history are starting to crumble before our eyes. Now, we're still dealing with the aftermath of this DDoS that happened last Friday. The U.S. is still out there saying, had to be Russia, had to be Russia, had to be Russia, had to be Russia. More about this when we come back from station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. I'm getting reader emails about how CNN is out there saying, don't read WikiLeaks. You don't want to read WikiLeaks. And apparently the comments underneath the YouTube video are just, well, they're obscene. I can't even repeat them here on the air, or our on-air affiliates will be in serious trouble with the FCC. And that's great when people have the courage to stand up and say, I'm mad as heck and I'm not going to take it any longer, like they did in Network, or more appropriately to today, you guys are all full of bovine poo and I am not listening to you anymore. We all have to have the courage to stand up and do that. All 300 million Americans need to stand up and tell everybody in the corporate media and in Washington, D.C., we know you have been lying to us all along. We refuse to listen to you anymore. Go ruin somebody else's life for a change. Leave us alone. Now, we were talking about last Friday's attack on Dyn, which is a high-volume DNS server company that supports websites with a lot of users, like Twitter and Reddit. And when the attack first happened, they tried to say, oh, this was Russia trying to support Donald Trump. Well, that was ridiculous because WikiLeaks uses Reddit and Twitter to put out most of the information, so it didn't make sense Russia would be hacking them. Then they tried to say it was WikiLeaks supporters doing it. Again, doesn't make any sense. So now there's a group called the New World Hackers claiming responsibility. We don't know who they are or if they really had anything to do with it or it's another propaganda dodge. But what is really interesting is how the hack was done. We have been warning about the Internet of Things for quite some time. And it's now pretty much understood that there is this Internet closed-circuit TV cameras made by a Chinese firm, Hangzhou Xiangmai Technology, were infected with malware that allowed the hackers to take over tens of millions of these devices to launch this attack. Now, the Chinese firm, to their credit, has recalled the webcams. They're going to scrub them out, they're going to bulletproof them and reissue them. But where is the U.S. government when all this criminality is taking place? Where's the National Security Agency, which we are told is in charge of securing our national infrastructure? Because if there's one thing this Chinese webcam assault taught us is our infrastructure is wide open. And Biden's out there saying we're going to go to cyber war with Russia. It's ridiculous. We're not prepared for a cyber war. Not when we're still getting Viagra ads into our mailboxes, not when ransomware is still draining the nation of money and risking people's lives when they attack hospitals. It's wide open. Now, speaking of healthcare and hospitals, if you are on Obamacare, you'd better take a deep breath and sit down because there are major hikes in the premiums due to start November 1st. Next week. 60-70% in some cases. And remember, last week, Obama was already out there denying it had anything to do with him. Oh, it's all the fault of the Republicans. It's the fault of the insurance companies. It had nothing to do with my Obamacare plan. That was perfect. That was pristine. There were never any problems with that. He was already trying to distance himself from that. Now, the same government that gave us Obamacare is now redesigning the payment system for Medicare, and it's expected that that's going to trigger a mass exodus of doctors willing to accept Medicare. Everything this central government does has the touch of death about it. Let's take a phone call. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike? Mike, I don't know if you heard, I don't know if you talked about it earlier, but one of the newest WikiLeaks came out. I'm surprised this is making major headlines because it has to do with the polls. You had Podesta admitting, or actually telling people to rig the polls. It gives them a better shot or to discourage people and stuff like that.
Yeah, we did mention it briefly in hour number one, but yeah, that's basically the Hillary campaign is in control of the corporate media, and they're telling the corporate media rig the polls to show Hillary is winning, and keep coming on out with these stories saying that effectively the election is over, Hillary's going to be your next president, you might as well get used to it. Under no circumstances will I accept Hillary Clinton as president of the United States of America. There is no way you're going to convince me she could win the vote of the majority of the American people. Especially when so many of the people voting for her are not even legal citizens.
I am concerned about one thing, though, like what not only the illegal aliens voting, dead people voting, things like that, but what Joel Skousen said earlier on actually Info was that he really thinks that they're going to turn the election with with computer fraud. That's really
They're using everything they can. I mean, Soros is linked with electronic voting machines in some 16 states. I mean, our election system is a joke. I mean, right now, the only Western democracy with a worse election system than we have is Panama. Our election system is wide. It's designed to be open to fraud. It's designed to steal elections so the elites can go on being the elites and convince you that you're still somehow in control and therefore you've given your consent to be governed to these people. And we haven't. Our consent to govern is withdrawn the instant we stop knowing these are the people we voted for.
It's amazing. They're doing everything they can seemingly to start a revolution because people are going to only take this for so long. I mean, like you said, when the government loses trust, how do you expect, we talk about wars and all this, but first of all, a nuclear war, of course, nobody's going to win. Mm-hmm. But how do you expect even, let's say you had a localized war against Russia without nuclear weapons? What do you call it again?
Conventional war.
How do you think you're going to beat the Russian army, which is a well-motivated now, well-motivated, tough army to same.
We're not, and that's why inevitably it will go nuclear. On the day when the U.S. government understands they cannot win a conventional war against Russia and China, they'll start turning those little brass keys in the missile silos, and it's going to be a bad day for anybody not on 2 million sunblock.
Yeah, I'm telling you, they're worried about climate change, global warming.
Yes.
What is it, 10,000 degrees above Fahrenheit above zero or something like that?
Right there, the temperature of fission and fusion, yeah, that's really where it is. And the lingering effects of the radiation. I mean, we still have radiation floating around this planet today from Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and all those open-air tests in the Pacific and Nevada. It's still out there. If you've got the appropriate lab equipment, you can this day get a souvenir of the Crossroads test, Castle Bravo, and all these other nuclear tests. And they're all identifiable.
And what's his name? Paul Craig Roberts said recently. I found one of his interviews on YouTube. He said just one of these, what is it, Su-24 missiles that the Russians have. One of the bombs today, which makes the basically Hiroshima and Nagasaki look like a firecracker. One of those bombs falling in New York State would destroy 3/4 of the state. And about 3 or 4 would destroy the whole East Coast. So, I mean, don't these people understand what they're playing with? Don't they understand?
Yeah, but they're caught up in groupthink. They're all on prescription antidepressants. Nobody dares speak against the war party. I mean, if you go back and you read Mark Twain's Mysterious Stranger, he lays it right out there on how everybody who knows the war is wrong, they're still, because of that groupthink, they're they go along with it, and they just hope that they themselves will not be personally inconvenienced. We need to take a second here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. We're talking about just how close to a nuclear war our country is, and my concern, obviously, is that if, in fact, the powers that be do not think Hillary Clinton can steal that White House, they are likely to start a hot war with Russia before the end of the year and stick Donald Trump with it the way the bankers stuck Herbert Hoover with the Depression of the 1930s. And it is a very dangerous situation. And you probably need to go on out there and bone up on the current nuclear arsenals and just how powerful those warheads are. Now, the good news is the really giant multi-megaton bombs, they've backed off of those, the so-called strategic weapons. And the evolution of newer nuclear weapons tends to be more for the tactical, smaller warheads that are more accurately placed by the aiming systems. But there's still a lot of nukes out there. For example, if you take your typical Ohio-class SSBN, which the Navy people who work on them says stands for Saturdays, Sundays, and a bunch of nights because they're hard to maintain. That's 24 Trident missiles with 8 warheads each. You can do the math on that. Some of the older ballistic missile submarines in the U.S. that have been obsoleted by treaty limitations on ICBMs have been converted into what are called arsenal ships, where the missile tubes now house 7 cruise missiles, which can be nuclear armed. Then you have on the Russian side, they're bringing their new missiles on there. If all of that stuff goes off at the same time, we're literally going to be in a situation of On the Beach, which, by the way, I did spot is coming back on cable. So you may want to look for that, mark it, record it with your DVR, because it is something that could really, really happen if this gets out of control. Maybe that's the reason why we've never found an extraterrestrial civilization out there. Sooner or later, they let their weapons get away from themselves and they blow themselves up. Okay? All right, we're going to switch over to Ralph in New York City. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. It's been a while. I want to ask you a hypothetical question. Do you think that it could be possible that a law enforcement strike could happen in this country in the inner cities? Because based on the pensions and the wages and the 401ks and all this bureaucracy, is that possible?
No, it's happened before. There have been police strikes.
Right. Could we see this happened in the 40s and the 50s and 60s, or?
Well, I'd have to go back and do a little research. I know most of them have been very small and of short duration, out of, the citizenry rising up and saying, oh, we're helpless in the face of all the violent criminals. But I think as Americans arm themselves up and realize that they rather than the police, are their best defense against crime, I think the political opposition to a police strike from the citizenry would be greatly reduced. So it would just be one branch of the government arguing with another branch of the government.
Because in the event of an economic collapse, could the prisons be open? Could the prisons be possibly open in the event of a collapse? There's no money for the prison industrial complex also?
Yeah, could very easily see that. The alternative story is that supposedly under some of the emergency executive orders, the more dangerous criminals would simply be summarily executed.
So that means the inner cities, big cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. These are the big targets that basically there's a couple of websites that based on that could be that hey, this job is not worth it anymore. Because my pension, my 401k is not going to be worth any value in the event of economic collapse. So yeah, a lot of them think about going on strike. I was like, whoa. I was wondering if you're aware about this.
Yeah, I'm aware about that, and the reality is right now, virtually every retirement program you have been encouraged to put your money into is at risk. And you need to take a lesson from what happened back in 2008, where Wall Street came up with these mortgage-backed securities. Wall Street's pet rating agencies rated them all AAA. Pension funds invested in them, which they could do legally, and then it all fell apart. And all these pensions all across America have been defunded, and everybody who was dependent on these pension funds is now realizing the retirement they worked for just isn't there. We have a similar situation going on here with Social Security. Now, back in the 1980s, Social Security taxes were increased in anticipation of the surge of baby boomer retirements. And so by the time Bill Clinton came into office, there was a huge cash surplus built up in the Social Security Trust Fund to cover those baby boomer retirements. Well, Bill Clinton came on in, saw all that money sitting there, and he grabbed it, put it into the general ledger, and spent it as general revenues. That's where he got his federal government budget surplus, by embezzling the retirement money of American workers. And you need to understand that money in the Social Security Trust Fund is not the property of the government. It's the property of you, the American people, entrusted to the government. And Bill Clinton declared it to be a loan, but this was at a time when everybody was saying the economy was doing wonderfully. And if you're having to borrow from the Social Security Trust Fund when the economy is good, then you know there's never going to be an economic situation where you can just repay that money. And in point of fact, Hillary Clinton is already out there campaigning, saying that as president, she will solve the Social Security problem by raising Social Security taxes again, meaning you're going to have to pay twice for what you were promised once, and you may still not even get it down the road.
And the retirement age limit is what, 67 or 72 now they want to raise it to now?
They're talking about raising it all the way to 75. The new philosophy here is work you until you drop dead. We don't need all these old people cluttering up our golf courses. Just work them until they fall over dead.
So millennials will definitely not live to be Social Security.
I would say right now, absent a complete change of government and economic system, the millennials are staring into a bleak old age.
So under Donald Trump presidency, that could change around? Or we go back to the days of the Reaganomics era again?
We could start to change, and I want to be very clear here. Getting Donald Trump into the White House is not going to be the panacea. It's not going to be the cure-all. There are still major, major problems with this country. But a Donald Trump in the White House and a cabinet that will work with him, and we, the American people, glaring at Congress so that they'll work with him, we could start to unwind so much of this damage that we have seen happen over the last 30 years. But it's not going to happen overnight. We're going to have to work with Donald Trump. If we get Donald Trump in the White House in 2 weeks' time, it means our workload is going to double. We can't just sit back and say, okay, we've elected Donald Trump, he's going to make everything work for us. No, he isn't. We're going to have to work with him. In fact, I'm going to revive something I started many, many years ago called Vine. Right. And I have websites for it and everything, and it was a program called Vine. It talks about the grassroots and everything like this, and Vine stands for Voting Is Not Enough. And it is a clarion call to the American people saying, you need to be directly involved in your government at all levels. If you want the government to be working for you, you're literally going to have to sit on their shoulders and whack them about the ears and say, you do the job we tell you to do. And stop believing this idea that once you've had, your election, that you can kick back and all will be well, because the last 30 years have shown us the fallacy of that thinking.
Mike, do you see a collapse in the fall of civil forfeiture in this country when it started back in the 80s? Do you see that collapsing also? Right along with the real estate collapse when it happens?
Well, we're looking at another real estate collapse right now. As far as the civil forfeiture, we're starting to see states roll back on that already, saying that there must be a criminal conviction before property can be seized. Because civil asset forfeiture has become one of the major causes of hostility between the ordinary population and the police department, because the American people are seeing the police steal more of our property than the burglars, thieves, and muggers all put together. And that's why there is so much resentment to the police force right now. They're seen as bigger criminals than the criminals.
And the reality is, on top of it, because civil forfeiture laws were glorified during the 1980s, like TV shows like Miami Vice. And people didn't see that also because that's also was glorified during the 80s and the Reaganomics era. Do you believe that?
See, the idea of civil forfeiture originally was that they were going to seize the assets of criminals and use that money to fund the prosecutions and investigations against them. But that was really too much work, and police departments instead started saying, we can use these laws to, increase our budget at a time when the state and city government is trying to cut our budget. and it became policing for profit. I remember one story that came out of Southern California when I was still living there. The police out in Malibu were lusting after this very large ranch that overlooked the ocean, and they were looking at it and saying, this thing is worth $5 million. If we can find a single marijuana plant on it, we can seize this entire ranch, sell it, put $5 million into our budget, and all will be well. And they raided the place. The guy who owned it didn't know who was coming on in because they were all in this black no-mix. He wound up getting killed. They never found any marijuana plants, and that is really the problem with this. We have turned the police force basically into a force that plunders and pillages the American people, and that's not what the police are supposed to be. Okay?
Mike, thank you. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. Awesome.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to let you
Mike.
go.
You're awesome.
Take a break for commercials. Do join us on the air, 800-313-9443, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, we're getting word James O'Keefe has now filed his own lawsuit against the Hillary Clinton campaign. He's filed the suit with the Federal Election Commission, saying that all of the information that has come out in the 3 Project Veritas videos indicate illegality in the campaign, and he wants the FEC to actually take action and investigate and prosecute. The pressure keeps building and building and building and building. And it's one thing when it's just 1 or 2 lawsuits, but when you have Donald Trump, James O'Keefe, all these other people, there are already 12 lawsuits against the Hillary Clinton campaign for vote fraud, election rigging during the primaries. Can you imagine how it's going to line up following the general election? All right, let's take some phone calls here. Mike in Brazil, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Okay, I was going to make my first point about George Soros, but since you were talking about those lawsuits against the DNC and Hillary Clinton, I just want to ask the simple question: why aren't these people who were injured in the altercations at Trump rallies suing for Hillary Clinton and the DNC for damages, psychological, physical damages, and violation of their civil rights? Because I believe
they ought to. Every single person who was harmed by this stuff ought to. And don't forget, when Hillary's brown shirts went on in to disrupt a Trump rally, that's a violation of Title 18, Section 594, intimidation of a voter, that is good for a year in jail. Every one of these people that Hillary's campaign hired to cause a ruckus at Trump's rallies needs to be in prison right now.
Absolutely, and the people who were injured, including the police officers on the scene, because I've seen some of them bleeding, big gash wounds on their faces, and they should go both barrels against Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and those thugs personally, at personal level, okay, and empty their bank accounts, put a freeze on their assets, sell everything they own, including their watches, and leave them in their underwear. Okay, this is what they should do.
I wouldn't even give them the underwear. I mean, let's be honest here. And but you need.
We got to be decent. We can't let them run around naked.
I can, and everybody gets all these rotted GMO vegetables from the supermarket and pelt them. But here, it's more serious than that. Over in Dallas, I think there were several police officers got killed. These people should be up on conspiracy to commit murder or accessory to commit murder. That's how serious this is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, let me ask you something. Why isn't George Soros in federal custody already, knowing what we know about him?
He ought to be, but unfortunately in our world, I mean, we literally are living Westworld here, where those with huge amounts of money can do whatever they want and suffer no consequences for it, while the rest of us wander around here programmed to believe we live in an orderly society.
Yes, I mean, this is really scary. It's mind-blowing. I mean, I can't believe this. I'm 6 years old, but I've never, ever witnessed such an election process so rigged, so corrupt. It's like it's beyond imagination. Even Orwell probably, even he would not have envisioned this kind of corruption. But let me ask you another thing. I was a little bit confused about, the Federal Reserve. Now, suppose for a minute that Congress retakes their power, their constitutional power, to issue the currency and regulate the value of it, right?
Yes.
Now, who's to say that they would not follow in the Federal Reserve's footsteps, doing the same thing what the Federal Reserve does?
Well, because the Constitution says the Congress has to coin money. It doesn't say they can do the ink and paper thing. The real money of the United States of America under the Constitution is coinage based on metals. And that's basically what it is. The original currency was silver, and the paper notes were just claim checks for convenience. The paper notes were never the money. The money is the coinage. And I understand that the population has grown so far that there isn't enough silver and gold to provide that kind of coinage, but any commodity with a fixed value is going to be suitable as a monetary base. We could even have a monetary system based on electricity, a kilowatt hour.
So you're saying that Congress would be practically chained from printing money out of thin air?
We would have to work to make sure those changes were in place. We know from 200 years, Congress will sell out the country, their own mother, for $1. Mike, I got to let you go.
Can you take me?
I'll take you over.
Can you take me through the commercials?
I'll take you through the commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking with Mike in Brazil. You had something else you wanted to share with us.
Yes, I have 3 more observations here. Okay, first of all, my gut feeling tells me that Hillary will be successful in stealing the election, okay? Which I believe that this will trigger an armed, bloody revolution like we've never seen before.
I would really like to find some way to avoid that. I would really like to avoid that.
I hate violence and I hate revolutions in general. Now, maybe there is a way to get the control back into the hands of the people. A nationwide strike that would bring the government to its knees. I mean, a general strike.
Worked
like
for
no
Gandhi.
Trains, no automobiles. What do you think about that?
It worked for Gandhi. That's how he got the British out of India. Is he just went on out to the Indian people and said, nobody goes to work, everybody stays home and prays and fasts. They don't work, they don't buy things. And it just brought the entire British imperial economy in India to a standstill.
Yeah, imagine nothing works. The Congress won't be able to get their cups of coffee and food and all. Everything is going to be closed. And I believe that this is a viable way of dealing with the situation, with the rampant corruption and fraud. And my last point that I was going to make, actually it's an observation, is about this flood of migrants from Middle East and Africa to both Europe and the United States. I believe this is ethnic cleansing, Mike. This is deliberately done to destroy the identity and the very fabric of the American society and its traditions.
I agree.
And, this is not this is ethnic cleansing, pure and simple. I have no other word to define it with.
Well, it's destroying our sense of regional, cultural, historical identity, and they're not just doing it to the United States. They're trying to do it to Europe. And it's not working the way they thought it would when they were sitting in their little, lounges with their glasses of cognac and thinking that this was all going to be so easy to do. It's certainly not worked out the way they hoped it would.
Europe is a disaster zone. I have friends in Europe, and they tell me that they're considering moving to South America. And thank God I live in South America, and for good or for bad. At least we don't have to face these issues that the Europeans face, and now the United States. So anyway, Mike, thanks for taking my call. You do a wonderful job, and keep doing it. It's like listening to your show is like attending college.
Well, thank you. Just call me Professor Mike, which I've actually...
Professor Mike, I tell you something. 10 years of university did not teach me what you taught me in 1 year listening to your show, okay? Keep up the good work. And God bless.
Thank you very much. And we're going to switch over to Sherry in Central Texas. Sherry, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. Listen, that last caller echoed what I was going to say. This is fantastic. Hillary's camp is so corrupt that if Donald, I don't trust her to not succeed. I think she'll succeed, but take heart, because I think that Donald will do better on his own anyway, because Congress will interfere with him so bad that it's just going to make things more awkward. The Republicans won't stand beside Hillary, I don't think. They've been wanting her out of the picture so long, they'll get someone else in that they can support. They don't want to honor her reputation or honor her legacy like they did past presidents where they overlooked their sins, like Reagan, for example. They're not going to honor her legacy. I think they're going to get her out. But here's my point. I, too, think that monopolies can fail. And am I correct to say the New York Times just gave Trump his support?
No, the New York Times is the New York Times, at least based on that one article I mentioned earlier in the show. They're out there saying that Donald Trump and the American people should just accept the results of a fraudulent election for the good of the nation and democracy. But I'll tell you this. First of all,
who is it supported him? Someone supported him. The NPR announced some newspapers supported him, and they didn't say which one.
Well, there's a lot of small newspapers that are supporting Donald Trump here. But getting on back to the issue, frankly, if it was a slam dunk that Hillary was going to get in, I don't think we'd be seeing the panic that we're seeing in the corporate media and the Hillary Clinton campaign. Second, if Donald Trump overcomes the election fraud, he's definitely not out of trouble. Jesse Ventura is of the opinion that Trump will be assassinated because Mike Pence is going to be easier for the New World Order to control. But if Trump gets in and he's not assassinated, okay, it will be up to us, the American people, to stand outside the offices of all of our senators and representatives and glare through the window and send them an unequivocal message. You do what we tell you to do. Not what Wall Street tells you to do, not what Israel tells you to do, not what the military-industrial complex tells you to do, not what Big Pharma tells you to do. You do what we say, or you are out next election, because if we can overcome the election fraud that was putting Hillary in, we can certainly whip the little tiny election fraud that you're using to hang on to your job.
Okay, yes. Grant, here's something else about Gandhi. He said, make the injustice visible. That's why WikiLeaks is so important to us. Gandhi also said if the people are in power, they can do something about religious minorities clashing with the established minorities, which in this case was Hindus, it was Hindus against Muslims.
Yes.
And see, if we can do something about it, if it's in our hands, if we have a sovereign nation under the people, we can do something about it. Gandhi said the thing is, the difference is when the British government tried to tell them that you need us to be safe. We hear that now. You need us to stem all this corruption and clashes and all this bad stuff. We hear that now. He said, yeah, but if we're in power, if the people are in power, then it's ours. It's our problem, and see, if it's ours, we own it, we can do something about it. We don't have to be in their hands. And he hated the idea of a government, a foreign government coming in. It's in the 1982 movie that I just saw like a month ago, because I felt, I have this on tape, I want to see something here. And I watched that movie that I taped a long time ago on Time Warner or something with, and I thought, it's all right here. It's in the second hour of the movie, and it's fabulous. Everyone should see that movie.
It's a wonderful movie. Ben Kingsley did a wonderful job on that. But there's two aspects that were not in the movie. First of all, Gandhi understood that the sectarian violence between the Muslims and the Hindus was being deliberately fanned up by the British government in order to say, without us, there will be chaos, just as we're seeing the race baiting going on by our government to sell us that same idea. The second thing, and a lot of people are very surprised to hear this, even though Gandhi advocated nonviolence, he was a strong supporter of the individual right to keep and bear arms. And that was always the fist inside the velvet glove. We're going to be nonviolent, but if you push past that, you will get into trouble.
Well, the best way to be nonviolent, I think, is to just keep pushing the truth out there. And Putin hates geoengineering.
Yes.
Others will
Well, he hates GMO.
Other countries will
He hates GMO. He's
geoengineering.
Hang on. He hasn't talked about geoengineering, and that's a myth anyway. But he's banned GMO, which is why he's hated by Monsanto and these other corporations. And he's building an economy that is based on selling the products people want to buy. Healthy food, well-made products. Here in the United States of America, as we've descended into fascism, the attitude is, we're going to sell you toxic food and drugs, and we're going to sell you products that fall apart every few years, so you have to buy another one, and you're not allowed a choice of anywhere else to go. That's the American system.
Because our system of health care profits from us being sick,
That's
Mike.
exactly right.
And Bernie, well, that's the next thing I want to talk about. And Putin, he saves money from them being well. Now, one other thing about Bernie, this is my little conspiracy theory. I kind of wonder if Bernie's family was threatened.
Yes.
I plan to vote for Trump, but is there any documentation that, remember Perot? I don't know how old you are. I'm ancient. Okay, I remember Perot saying, I have to drop out of this race because my family's been threatened and I can't deal with that. And I was wondering if maybe this happened to Bernie.
There have been reports that Bernie Sanders' family was threatened. There was one incident where Bernie Sanders was at the Democratic National Convention and all of a sudden showed up with a rather obvious bruise on his face, like he'd been personally attacked himself. And we know the Clintons do not hesitate to kill anybody who gets in their way. That's just a reality that anybody who's trying to stand up to them has to accept and live with.
Yes, this is what I thought, because the Hillary's camp is so corrupt. I mean, what else stands to reason? Do you think more people could put that message out?
Well, at this point, Bernie's candidacy is an afterthought, other than the fact that Bernie Sanders supporters did not follow his lead to support Hillary Clinton. They're calling themselves the Trumpicats. They're re-registering as Republican. And Bernie Sanders supporters are very much, for the most part, I think about 60 to 70% are going to vote for Donald Trump. They're going to cross party lines.
Good. My final thought, if there is a newspaper out there supporting him, I want to buy that newspaper. That's one way we can combat the injustice. Let them see their numbers go up. We want that newspaper. If I can find a newspaper, see, I'm not online, and I don't go online very seldom, and I just go by what I hear, weigh it out, I believe in this, I don't believe in that, and I put it out there. How can I find out whatever newspaper supporting him, I don't care how small, I'd like to know what it is so I can see if I can buy it here.
Okay, New York Post endorsed Donald Trump, so you could start there.
All right, I thought he was on Diane Reeves today, and he sure didn't sound like he was. Are you sure?
Well, sorry, who was on Diane Reeves?
Diane Reeves had a whole panel of newspaper people, and they were all anti-Trump.
Was it the New York Post or New York Times? The New York Times is dead set against Donald Trump.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks a lot. We're going to let you go. We got a lot of callers waiting on the line. Linda in Ohio, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. A comment and a question. I so thoroughly enjoy you and Claire listening to you two. It sounds like a little roundtable discussion right in my home. I just love it. But and my question is, I've been waiting for months to ask you. Do you remember this Rebecca Ross? She wrote that book, Methodical Illusion.
Mm-hmm.
Professor Fetzer exposed her as a fraud, and I just wondered if anybody's ever done any more follow-up on her, why she would write a book like that. The only thing I can think of is to undermine the idea of controlled demolition.
Well, there have been a lot of people who will accept a book contract to write a book that pushes a particular agenda. I mean, getting on back to the movie Denial and David Irving, it has almost become a joke how many of these books telling the story of the Orthodox version of the Holocaust, how these people have been well compensated, they get movie deals, and then it's exposed as a complete hoax, and then all of Israel comes in to defend them, saying, well, even though the story was made up, it captures the spirit and the feel of what happened, and we should go on using it in our college class. And it really is, it's a joke. Book deals are often a way to do a payback for a political favor. When somebody like, well, for example, Hillary Clinton gets a huge advance to do It Takes a Village. It wound up, the book was ghostwritten. It didn't sell very well. She did get a Grammy for the book-on-tape version of it, but that was political as well. And these days you go into bookstores, if you can still find any, and It Takes a Village is in the manager's closeout bin. But it's a way of being able to pay somebody back for a political favor which looks legal. Oh, it's just a book deal. That's all it is.
Okay, well, thank you for your opinion.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to David in Oklahoma. Aloha, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, thank you, Professor Mike. It seems to me that when listening to you, and I think your listeners would agree, that people like George Soros, Henry Kissinger, the Rothschilds, they have their fingerprints all over this mess this nightmare hell that we're living. And my question to you would be, what advice would you have for them? Like, would they want to leave the planet? Because sooner or later, one day, they're going to have justice on their front door with pitchforks. Do you have any suggestions on how they could possibly leave the planet? Because we are coming after them.
Well, see, here's the thing. With whether it was Henry Kissinger or Zbigniew Brzezinski or Bill Gates or George Soros, they set out on these enterprises absolutely convinced that what they're going to do is going to work, that everybody is going to believe that what they're doing is wonderful, and that it's all going to end very well. When it doesn't work out, when they realize that their analysis was very, very sloppy, they start thinking in terms of their own survival, and they'll keep throwing money at it to try and force their way through. But yeah, at some point, there's going to be a flashback. Now, for some of these people like Henry Kissinger, I don't think he's going to live long enough for justice to catch up with him. And you know something? I almost really don't care. I just want to cut these unelected systems of control away from ordinary people. Now, Zbigniew Brzezinski is out there screaming, we need to invade Russia. Okay, Zbig, here's your rifle. We need to start grabbing everybody who thinks these wars are a good idea and put them on those front lines. But as long as we have a system where we have these money junkies protected and ensconced in the heart of America, sending other people's children out to be killed, they're going to go on doing it. Because they don't care about the people who get killed in these wars. All they care about is the money they're making off of them. And I remember there was this comment that came from Zbigniew Brzezinski. He called it the global political awakening. And from his point of view, that's a bad thing. They don't want us waking up to what's really going on. And again, going back to the Westworld metaphor, and by the way, I'm not the only person who's seeing this. Westworld, especially in the original movie, Westworld falls apart when the hosts wake up and realize the true nature of their reality. And that's what's happening right now, where the American people are waking up and realizing that this fiction of an ordered society in which we elect our own leaders is just a fiction. And there is a greater reality beyond it in which we are all slaves to the private central banks who play with us like toys. All right, anyway, we got to take a break here. Thank you very much for the phone call, David, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to the phones here. Craig in Louisiana. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, good evening, Mike. I sent you or emailed you a video from C-SPAN a little while ago. It's about a discussion that was videoed on October 20th, where they had these guys from cybersecurity. There's 3 representatives, and they were discussing the U.S.'s election systems using these electronic voting machines. And I tell you what, they talk way above my head. But anybody, when you sit there and listen to them, you know what they're talking about just from the generalities. But there's multiple holes, and it's well worth anybody to listen if you really want to see where we're at with these machines and how vulnerable we are.
Well, they're designed to be hacked and cheated. And again, if you've never been there, you need to go to blackboxvoting.org. It's run by a wonderful lady named Bev Harris, and in fact, there was a documentary called Hacking Democracy on HBO that focused on Bev and her work. And it ends with an actual hack of an electronic voting machine without needing to touch the voting machine. And it's quite illustrative. And if you look at one of the earliest companies to get into these electronic voting machines was the Diebold Company. And they had a reputation for making bank automated teller machines that never lost a penny from one end of this country to the other. And their electronic voting system, GEMS, has at least 12 known ways to get in and change the outcome of the election without leaving a trace. It has to be by design. And I will not accept that the nation that put men on the moon can't come up with an absolutely trustworthy, accurate, honest election system. And if we don't have them, if we don't have one, it's because they don't want one, because they want to go on stealing the Senate and the House of Representatives and the White House for themselves.
Exactly. And they covered all what you just talked about. They covered that in detail and more. So anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about. So thank you for everything you're doing.
All right, thank you very much. Here, we're going to let you go. I'm also getting emails coming on in. The Las Vegas Review-Journal, the biggest newspaper in Nevada, has endorsed Donald Trump. So they are out there, and we need to celebrate that, subscribe, let them know we appreciate the fact that they're on the side of we the people against the corrupt oligarchy. All right, we're going to start with Malcolm in New Mexico, and I'm probably going to have to take you through the station identification. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. Welcome from the land of enchantment or entrapment, depending on the state of your car or the state of your urine.
True.
By the way, you're looking good with that. Haircut. It looks a lot better. I've been going to Donald Trump's websites. I've been going on Facebook. I've been going to several places. By the way, thank you for wearing the red shirt. That's what I'm pushing. When we go out to vote for Donald Trump, we must wear red shirts. And if we see the monitors there, we have to go up and say, I voted for Donald Trump, and I'm not ashamed to say so. Because they're going to try to steal this election.
There's no question they're going to steal this election. We have to literally make it impossible for them to get away with it. We can't stop them, but we can make it impossible for them to get away with it. All right, Malcolm, stay on the line. We're going to take a short break for station identification. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're going back to Malcolm in New Mexico. Aloha. What's on your mind?
Oh, well, it's just what I was just saying. It's very important to get the word out, get everybody to, if you're voting for Donald Trump, please go out, wear red when you go out to vote, and if you see the poll, don't wait for them to come to you. You go up to them because they're going to try to steal this, and if we can make a presence to let people know how many people just out there are voting for Trump, and it's obvious it's going to probably be a landslide unless they try to twist it the other way. If we make our presence known, it's going to be unbelievably difficult for them to do that. So I'm trying to get the word out. I'm hoping everyone else does the same thing.
Yeah, we are doing the same thing. In fact, a lot of people are saying, why wait for Election Day? Just start wearing red right now. There is no way we can stop them from trying to steal this election. They've made that very clear. We can, however, working together, make it impossible for them to convince America this election was not stolen. And that's just as good.
Good point. Okay, well, anyway, that was all I wanted to say. Keep up the great work, man.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch to Kyle in Pennsylvania. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Well, going back to what the sort of nuclear weapons discussion that you guys were having earlier, if anybody wants to see the power in nuclear weapons that we have today, there's a fantastic documentary out there called Trinity.
Yes.
With William Shatner as a narrator.
Yes.
And it will literally... It goes through the entire progression of the atomic bomb to the hydrogen bomb, everything. And it will literally send shivers down your spine when you see the 100,000 megaton bombs that we dropped.
Okay, nobody has made a 100,000 megaton bomb. The Russians made a 100 megaton bomb called the Tsar. But when they tested it, they dialed it back to only 50. They were even scared of what they had. There was another film, a documentary that came out, I think it was made in Canada back in the 1970s, it may have been, called The Atomic Cafe. And this was just a condemnation of nuclear weapons at a time when Americans still felt building nuclear weapons was a really good thing to do. And it was actually banned in the United States for a while, but it finally got past the censors. And it's a cult classic. In fact, if you remember the second Road Warrior movie, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, what's the name of the bar inside that barter town? It says Atomic Cafe. That's where that came from.
Yeah. Well, I also am a firm believer that they didn't spend $1 billion on a particle collider in, you know, to look for science reasons. I still contest that when you're messing with the fundamental elements of our universe, they're trying to weaponize it somehow. I've seen some reports that they say that they've had instruments that have detected sort of antimatter weapons and dark matter weapons that you're talking about the end of existence as you know it, the ultimate, you know, mutually assured destruction.
Okay, well, let me make a point here. Anytime there's a major scientific endeavor, there's always going to be a clandestine military component. When Bob Ballard went on out to discover the Titanic, the first part of his mission, which was paid for by the U.S. Navy, was to locate and document the wreck sites of the USS Scorpion and the I'm trying to think of the other one that went down there. And hang on a second. Thresher, the USS Thresher. And during that part of his mission, his scientists who'd come from Europe were literally ordered to stay in their cabin. And it was only after Ballard found and documented the wreck sites of the Scorpion and the Thresher that the Navy said, okay, you've got another 2 weeks, go and look for the Titanic, and he went and he found it. One of the very first supercomputers ever built was called ELIAC 4, and it was publicly described as a computer system which combined with a global network of sensors would give accurate week-long weather forecasts, but it was actually being used for simulating mathematically nuclear detonations. And it failed to provide the week-long weather forecasts, and when they studied why that happened, that's what gave rise to chaos theory. So there's always that component. Now, the reality is the amount of energy it takes to produce antimatter is gargantuan compared to the energy that comes on out. And most people don't realize there's actually a form of antimatter that's already in use today, and it's called the positron, which is the antiparticle to the electron. And when you go in to the hospital for a PET scan, what they're doing is firing the positrons into your brain or whatever part of the body that they're looking at. They collide with an electron and they give off a burst of energy, and that is what is detected and displayed on the screen. So antimatter is not automatically the end of the world. It's actually in industrial use right now. But as far as CERN is concerned, there is no question that weapons developers are looking at what could possibly come on out of there.
The search for the Higgs boson particle was on record because they were trying to figure out a way to tear the fabric of reality open. I mean, that's...
Well, I'm still not convinced what they found was the Higgs boson, because the Higgs boson search was tied up with finding some way to reconcile the religious doctrine of a Big Bang theory with general relativity, which would say that that Big Bang would be the biggest black hole in the universe and couldn't differentiate. So they came up with this idea that in that first moment of creation, what came out of the Big Bang was energy and material without any mass whatsoever. There were two kinds of material that came on out from the Big Bang. One was this sort of massless pre-matter or batter, and then the other was the Higgs boson, and then you mix them together like the two tubes of epoxy, and regular matter would come on out. It's a construct about as bogus as epicycles, and what they found that they're saying is the Higgs boson doesn't match the predictions exactly. Now, particle physicists like to joke that studying matter with a collider is like taking two mechanical spring-wound clocks and bashing them together and figuring out what the clocks look like based on the gears and springs and levers that fly on out. But to take that analogy one step further, if you bang those clocks together hard enough, individual teeth on the gears are going to break off and come out as discrete objects, even though you know they didn't exist as such before. So at the energies and velocities they're using in these big colliders today, you cannot say for certainty what's coming on out is actually a part of the natural structure of the universe or an artifact of the experimental process itself.
Well, what the entire hope was that they could somehow create basically a wormhole and bypass the speed of light so that they could instantly transport a weapon from Russia to the United States and not have to worry about having it be shot down.
Well, that was kind of a blue sky application here. I mean, again, looking at the amount of energy it takes to create a wormhole or a warp drive, even the Large Hadron Collider does not come anywhere near to doing that. Basically, the Large Hadron Collider is a very expensive high-tech cathedral trying to bridge the gap between man and the gods. And in that context, there is very little difference between the Large Hadron Collider, the big cathedrals of Europe, Stonehenge, the pyramids. These are all constructs built to the greatest technology available to the people at that time to try and actually connect with the gods and prove that they exist.
Well, I mean, aside from neutron weapons and things of that nature, we know that they have projects like Operation Aurora. You have the vapor trail from basically Area 51 to China, which you have a vapor trail that was there for 45 minutes and it went entirely across the face of the Earth.
Well, that's the transatmospheric hypersonic vehicles, and the U.S. is developing them, China's developed them, Russia has developed them. That's ultimately what Project Aurora was supposed to be, but, you know, it's a very... it's a high-tech aircraft, and I remember I was living in Southern California during the era of what were called the Aurora quakes, when we could hear the shock waves of these things coming back down to Edwards. As far as neutron weapons are concerned, obviously the development of neutron enhancement weapons or the neutron bomb, those are weapons of invasion. They're designed to kill all the people in a city but not harm the city so that the city can be used.
I think that my entire point is, yes, nuclear weapons are extreme danger, but there's a lot of other things out there that we're not aware of.
Probably. I mean, the military likes to keep itself 20 to 30 years ahead of the civilian science, which is why if Trump succeeds in winning the White House, I'm going to be personally lobbying to take NASA away from let's support global warming and other political agendas and take it back to what it was in the 1960s. Not necessarily to be going to other worlds, but back in the 1960s, NASA was a civilian technology incubator. Everything they invented was immediately made available to the American industry to develop new products. The tech boom of the 70s, 80s, and 90s came out of the race to the moon. And if we're going to leapfrog ahead and regain any kind of leadership in the global marketplace, we need a civilian technology incubator, because everything the military comes up with, by the time it's allowed into the public, it's of no use in terms of trying to build new products and services.
Yeah, it's not getting to the moon that's important. It's the science that you need
exactly.
to get to the moon.
It's exactly. Absolutely. Okay?
All right, Mike. Have a great day.
All right. Same to you. We're going to switch over to Frank in London. Aloha, Frank. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Frank?
Yes, Mike?
Yeah, there you are.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, sir. Yeah, one of the, just the item about science. To me, the word see science now, it's very subjective. It's geared, it's politicized now, so we don't really know quite what the truth is with all these inventions and stuff like that.
Well, that's why we need to bring science education back to our school system so that people are able to look at these claims being put out by the various hucksters and say, I understand this can't work because of the second law of thermodynamics. Right now, what passes for science education in Common Core is simply obeisance to declared realities from the past. They're not teaching our kids how to think. They're not teaching them how to analyze and solve problems and relate information back and forth. And we need to bring that back. Again, if we're going to take the American economy and once again become a global technology industrial leader, we have to train our kids how to think, how to design, how to solve problems. But a government that lives by lies, fraud, and deception, they don't want a population that can think for themselves and solve problems, because then they're going to be in serious, serious trouble, which is exactly what's happening here right now.
Yeah, my second point is about a different subject, about the world leaders in the West right now and how they look compared to Putin. I was quite amused I was listening to Crosstalk on RT TV today, and that program, and there was an English guy. I've never heard of him before. I've never seen him before, to be quite honest. And he said, our leaders in the West look very weak, the way they present themselves, look very wimpy. Compared to Putin, I can't use the language, but compared to Putin, they look very, feeling-fied, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Because they're scammers. They're not leaders. They're not managers. They're very successful drug criminals, but that does not map over into being a good leader or manager of a nation.
That's correct. Okay, thanks much, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Ed in Michigan. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you just fine.
I wanted to talk about this Russian Uranium One thing where they were actually lobbying the Wildlife Service and the Clinton Foundation, and how can the Russians lobby our government?
They write a big check to the Clinton Foundation, and the Secretary of State says, talk to these people. Now, it wasn't just Russia. It was a consortium between a Russian and a Canadian company, and the Canadian company was sort of the cutout that made it acceptable for them to come on into the United States. But ultimately, it was this Russian company, and because of their very generous donations to the Clinton Foundation, Russia is now in control of something like 20% of America's uranium resources.
And in the meantime, the Bundys are going through a trial out there in Oregon where he's trying to represent himself in a trial over issues pretty much directly related to this whole thing, really.
Well, it's not just the Bundys, it's the Hammonds. A lot of people got hurt with this. An entire town got hurt that were sitting on this land because Canada and Russia didn't want to pay the fair market value for all this land and its mining rights. It was much cheaper to bribe the Secretary of State through the Clinton Foundation and just get this stuff leased to them for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, there can't be that can't be legal.
No, it's corrupt beyond belief here, and again, all of this was a violation of the Enclave Clause in the Constitution, which specifically says that the federal government may not own any land other than what's underneath federal buildings and federal infrastructure like harbors and military bases and airports. And the Founding Fathers put that in there to prevent a future central government from simply grabbing the land of the people and selling it off to fix their own economic problems.
Have you heard? Do you know the amount of the lobbying payments? They were like $20,000 and $40,000 and.
I forget the total, but it's somewhere in the millions. And I'm sure if you do a Google search on Uranium One, you'll get all the details. The corruption has hit the flood stage here. There is so much of it, nobody can really be in command of it all. You're just going to have to take those top points that you know of and start digging down to find out the real nitty-gritty.
There was another company before Uranium One that was involved in all that. And I don't know if they just changed the name of the company or if it was sold or.
Now, if you're talking about the Bundys, that was a completely different company. It's tied up with Harry Reid that wanted to build a new sort of developed area around an intersection on this highway that went past the Bundy Ranch, where they wanted to put up stores and shopping malls and gas stations and just sort of seed a new community. But they wanted all of the land to be available. I think China is tied in with this one. But in order to make it work, they had to get rid of the Bundy Ranch because this was this big privately owned block of land right in the middle of their planned community.
No, there was another company before Uranium One that somehow is tied into all this. That the company before Uranium One had another name, and there was some other, people involved. Like you were talking about the Canadian association to the Clintons and that.
It doesn't ring a bell, but I imagine if you do a Google search, you'll find it. Or maybe not Google.
Yeah.
Google is now censoring everything. We need to start identifying and using search engines that still respect freedom of speech and the right of the people to know what's going on, because all of these big corporate social media platforms, Google, Facebook, YouTube, I'm finding out that YouTube is shadow banning anybody who posts a reference to my website or my radio show. They'll put it in on their own account and they'll see it, but if you look at that same channel under any other account, the mention is completely gone. One thing I would dearly love to see out of a Trump administration is for all of these large companies like Facebook and YouTube to be declared critical national infrastructure and be constrained by the same laws regarding fairness and equal accuracy that we see TV, radio, the telephone system, and so forth.
There was John Podesta actually lobbied to sell U.S. uranium to Russia. There is a video by H.A. Goodman on YouTube that breaks it down pretty good.
Okay, well, we'll take a look for that one. We're coming up now on a commercial break here, and Ed, I'm going to let you go. We got another caller who's been waiting very, very, very patiently from Vancouver. So we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go to the phones. Bernard in Vancouver. Aloha. Welcome to the show. Thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind?
Oh, it was fine. I got to listen to the program. I wanted to... I've got a good story about language, something I heard on your network last night, if you have time after this. But before I discovered your program and RBN, I listened to Coast to Coast for about 20 years. So I heard you when you were on there a while back, but I think it's more than due, and I'd be happy to phone them up and talk to Lisa or somebody. Maybe some of the Rangers might too, but I think it's due to hear somebody with some meat and some substance, because they're kind of wishy-washy. And they got this guy, Howard Bloom, and you know what he says about the body count? Oh, he said somebody just come up with this list and kind of threw it, that's just like there was no evidence or anything, not even statistical improbability, just somebody's idea, and call it that, and no rebuttal, So I think that, I don't know anybody that could kind of give an overview of that than yourself, if I may say.
Well, Coast to Coast knows where I am, and so does everybody else, and if they want to call me up, they can. And I'm getting a lot of calls. I was on a show, I was on Richie Allen's show earlier today. When I'm done with this program, I'm doing Jim Goddard in Vancouver, and then a little later today, I'm going to be doing 2 hours with Truth Cat. So,
Right.
Today it's 6 hours worth of radio that I'm doing. So the word is getting on out there. I don't need to chase coast to coast. If they want me, they got to call me.
Yeah, no, I'll suggest them. But anyway, I heard somebody was on your network last night. They used the F-bomb, and I think it was totally legitimate because they were quoting Hillary Clinton, that famous meltdown when she, out of, I guess, fear that they're going to end up in jail. And that's exactly what she said. And the guy, he quoted her exactly, and it has quite an impact, to hear the actual...
Okay, well, here's the situation on the bad language. Okay, I personally have no problem with any words. I don't think we should allow ourselves to be shocked by certain words. But my program is carried by on-the-air AM and FM broadcasters who are subject to the FCC rules. And so we have to constrain our language for their benefit. If I was not being carried by the AM and FM broadcasters, I would probably be just as free with the language as anybody else. And so that's what's going on here, because even though the United States is showering white-hot flaming death on innocent people around the world in countries we're not actually at war with, we're not allowed to use bad words on the radio to prove we are a just and moral people.
Well, they threatened to put Dr. Bill in jail in Canada. I heard him say it twice on his program. I have the blessed I can listen to his program at work in the morning, and I don't know anybody that's had more direct experience in dealing with the Canadian authorities. Like both John Stadtmiller and Dr. Bill both described Canada as communist, and I think they're referring to the extreme restrictions on freedom of speech, the Arthur Topham case.
Yes.
What about David Irving? He was handcuffed and put in jail by armed policemen, and then
look how they shut down the Comex lawsuit from any reporting in the Canadian media, and they were blocking websites that were reporting it from outside Canada. They didn't want the Canadian people to know what was going on there. Speaking of Jim Goddard, he's telling me that among his associates within the corporate broadcasting in Canada, their management is just coming on down and saying, you will find a way to destroy Donald Trump if you don't clean out your office right now. That's how completely dictatorial it is.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't doubt that for a minute. Yeah. No, it's really. There was some conservative talk show guy was interviewed by an American who is in Canadian radio, and he said that they're selling Hillary Clinton as shredding this little bit of credibility they had because they didn't have much to start with.
Yeah, that is pretty.
Anyway, I appreciate.
Okay. That's pretty much what's going on here in the U.S. The corporate media has so overcommitted for Hillary. Their credibility is very much on the line. Now, if Hillary steals the White House, she will, help the corporate media. She'll crush the independent media and drive things back to the way they were in the 1950s and 1960s. But unfortunately, we could see if Hillary steals the White House and is able to hang on to it, we're looking at the beginning of a true dictatorship in this country, and that's just the reality of what's going on.
Yeah, I hear you. I've heard you say that. Yeah. I really appreciate such a breath of fresh air. I mean, in Canada, well, for example, Peter Mansbridge, he's the guy with the voice. He was discovered announcing ETAs at the airport. Well, he goes to Bilderberger meetings, but yet Justin Trudeau is quoted by these great kind of guerrilla journalists. He said, "I'm not going to be going to any Bilderberger meetings."
Bernard, I'm going to put you on hold. I'm going to bring you back after the commercial break. Don't go away. Okay. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Bernard here about, Bernard, just take it from here.
Well, just maybe I had one other item. I think I mentioned on John's show one time, but it's so amazing to see, the big issue of the immigration and the open borders, especially your southern border with Mexico. I'll just mention briefly an item that was on our local news recently. A young woman was asked if she'd ever smoked marijuana. There was no mention of her being high or having anything on or anything like that, even accessories. And she said she had. She was not only denied entry, she was banned for life on that basis. Now, there is a provision for some large sum of money you can try to get a waiver, but I thought they sure are not interested in Canadians, because that's like reading your mind, Like the fact that I was charged one time but have no criminal record, the judge said you could be hassled going into the States, and that's true. Because
listen, if you want to come into the United States of America, make a donation to the Clinton Foundation, and be driving an entire truckload of illegal drugs for the CIA, and you'll go right past the borders.
Yes, right. Yeah, we're pretty hip. I don't know what would we do without following American politics and all the other intellectual things going on. We'd die of boredom, I'm sure.
Well, we'd be a lot more relaxed, I think. I'm not bored, but definitely a lot more relaxed. We'd have more time for more peaceful and pleasant pursuits. Bernard, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch to Al in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I hope you and your wife are well.
Well, we're hanging in there.
Oh, yeah? Good. I watch you regularly, and, of course, I'm on your website a lot. I'm curious, before I continue, do you post on CBC?
No, generally I don't.
You have a few followers then, because some of your sayings and ideas are out there. Just like Kramer with his gabardine pants. You're out there, I'm telling you.
Well, I know a lot of people take what I'm doing here on this website and radio show, and it is copied off. People make videos from this stuff. I don't know how great my reach is. I do know it's out there, and that's fine, because all of the original content on my website is in the public domain. The graphics, the original articles, you don't need to worry about permission. Just grab it, put it on out there, and share the knowledge. We're
very gracious that way.
Well, you know, I'm not in this to make money, and by golly, I've certainly succeeded in that aspect of it. Yeah, it's all about educating the public and trying to pull us off this edge of this abyss, you know, before we have mushroom clouds to deal with.
You're doing a good job. I know for a fact, because I do post on the CBC from time to time, and one of the sayings that you say, hoisted by your own petard, someone used it yesterday or the day before.
Okay, now that doesn't originate with me. That's a very old expression.
Oh, I know, I understand that.
Okay, all right. I don't want to take credit. I don't want to take credit for other people's, you know.
No. You can actually punch that into a search engine like Start Page, and you know it'll tell you exactly what it means.
Yes.
And which is a great thing, because the first time you said it, I had no idea what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to love the internet, Mike. I mean, if it weren't for the internet, can you imagine the dark ages we'd be living in right now?
Well, I'll give you the inverse. If there had been an internet in Germany in the 1930s, Adolf Hitler would have stayed a frustrated artist.
Maybe not even that. Anyway, so it seems that this little bitty part of Belgium over in Europe has somehow managed to stop this Canada-European trade agreement from going through. How beautiful is that? The whole country that I live in has no idea what is actually in that agreement. It's not in the news. It's not a part of our educational system, and it's definitely not something that politicians talk about. Why? Obviously, there's something to hide, and that's our sovereignty.
Okay. That is amazing. That is amazing.
The CEPA. Wallonia, I think this little itty-bitty part of Belgium is called. And what's amazing is, if you go on the CBC, I mean, I'm not telling you to do it, but if you go on the CBC, there's a story there, and it's open for comments, and by far, over 90% of the comments, I mean, you know, most of the people, I would think, understand what free trade agreements are about. They're not about free. They are agreements, but they're corporate takeovers, and it's more of that.
If you've got free trade, why do you need an agreement? I mean, that's just common sense. These are actually anti-free trade agreements because they constrain countries and individuals to only buy certain products from favored suppliers. These are anti-competition agreements to basically mandate favored corporations preferential treatment.
And there are quotas involved.
Yes.
Obviously. I mean, there's this ongoing soft lumber, you know, dispute going on between Canada and the United States, and it's been that way for a long time. And, I live in a city where at one time you'd be able to find a better job than you had the day before, literally. And all of those jobs disappeared as a direct result of NAFTA.
Yes. Absolutely.
So, and for America, I know for a fact, because I watched Ross Perot and I heard his giant sucking sound words, that it's worse for the United States. And, there's a popular belief that, United States stuff is junk. No, it's not. I've bought a lot of United States tools, drill bits and whatnot and so forth, and it's not junk. It's the best money could buy.
There are still American companies that produce very good machine tools and stuff. Most of what we're buying at the consumer level is imported. But it's for certain we do not have the volume of manufacturing we used to have. And again, that's part of the New World Order. They wanted to basically turn the planet into an area of protected havens where this area would be in charge of electronics, this other area machine tools, this other area agriculture, the idea being to enforce interdependence, to basically create a world where no one region had the means to just take care of themselves and not be part of the collective any longer. And that was a big part behind NAFTA, behind the offshoring of U.S. high-tech jobs to other countries. They don't want any nations able to totally take care of their own needs because then they're independent. That's why they've got their knickers in a twist over both China and Russia right now. Anyway, listen, Al, I need to let you go. We're coming to the end of the show, and I got something very important I need to cover with all of you. We're going to close the phone lines here. And somebody wrote on in and said Uranium One's chairman used his family foundation to make 4 donations to the Clinton Foundation totaling $2.35 million. So that's the degree of corruption, and that's what all these foundations are for. They're there to launder money, dodge taxes, act as a slush fund. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, and you probably heard it during the show, I've got a bit of a cough. Now, at the moment, the cough is because Claire and I both came down with this cold that's making the rounds here in Hawaii. I can hear the neighbors coughing and hacking, Claire's choirs coughing and hacking. But along the way of trying to figure out what's been going on, we made an interesting discovery, because even when we don't have colds, we tend to have a lot of upper respiratory distress, and we didn't know where it was coming from. And we got a filter system for the bedroom with a HEPA filter and all the rest of that stuff going on. And so over the weekend, we were doing one of our regular heavy cleanings of the house, and we were redoing the bed, and I decided to take the inner cover off the mattress and wash it, and discovered that the foam mattress was starting to literally turn to dust, and it's only about 3 years old. And so I went on out and I did a little bit of research, and what I found will floor you. And what it has to do with, most pillows and mattresses sold in the United States of America are made with these synthetic petroleum-based chemicals. Memory foam is the worst. It is actually very, very expensive to go on out and find a mattress like we knew as children that are filled with natural materials. And these manufacturers love these foam mattresses because they come out of a molding machine. They put them in a box. They ship them. They're very, very profitable. But the chemicals used to make them are very, very dangerous, even when they're brand new. Chemicals from the manufacturing process are breathing out of these foam products. And you spend 1/3 of your life in these beds, and you're sleeping on them with your face literally pressed into these foam materials. And it's coming on through these fabric inner covers and the sheets, and you're inhaling them. And these chemicals are known to be carcinogenic, mutagenic. They can cause all kinds of problems like gout, leg cramps, fatigue. And it's just another case of where, in the name of higher profits, we are being sold products that are actually very harmful to us. And so Claire and I are going to go on out and we're going to try and find some kind of a sleeping pad that we can sleep on that doesn't have these materials in there. Because after 3 years, the stuff is just literally dissolving, and we're inhaling those particles while we sleep on them. And if you are having a problem with continuous fatigue and you don't need to know the source, if your eyes are constantly red in the morning when you get on up, if you're having upper respiratory issues and a cough that the doctor can't explain, and you're sleeping on a foam mattress, you need to check that out right now. And it's another case, it reminds me very much when we went through this 5-year period where Claire was suffering intense joint pain to the point where she couldn't play her harp, couldn't play keyboard. Was one of the reasons I pushed her into the electronic paradigm so she could still do music without the pain issue. And we went to the orthodox medical route for 5 years. Ointments, pills, special shoes, all the rest of it, none of it worked. And then finally, I took it upon myself to do a little research and found out the problem was these formaldehyde precursors in low-end cosmetics and household products. And we flushed those out of our lives, It was like a switch had been thrown and Claire is fine. Now we're finding out the mattress that we bought from a name brand mattress company is a health hazard. And it's just another reminder. We live in a society where what's good for the ordinary people is just not a factor in the calculations any longer. And doctors and nurses are not trained to look for these things. They're trained to find something they can sell you a product for. And I felt I should mention this because when I did a Google search on foam mattress health issues, there were literally thousands of hits of all these studies that are done by Mother Jones and over here at chemtalks.com, I got this huge article basically saying these are very harmful. They're very harmful for you. They're very harmful for your children. But as long as it's making money, it's permitted, because until the government comes on out and says you're not going to sell these toxic products for the American people, corporations will go on selling them. Now, down in Australia, they're on a major war against anybody opposed to mandatory vaccinations. The Australian government is now calling for the public to report any nurses, midwives, and doctors who are not fully on board with sticking all the needles in you the government wants stuck in you. Now, if we have any kind of an inalienable right, it is to choose what goes in our body and what does not, especially with the long history of harm and ineffective vaccinations. Now, when Claire and I first got this cold and I took her down to the clinic, and they were the same thing. Oh, you need a flu shot. You need a flu shot. No, we don't want the flu. Oh, you really should get it. And I told this person, I'm old enough to remember the mandated swine flu vaccinations of 1976. And they killed, the vaccine killed 50 times as many people as the flu did. Totally blank look. Had no idea this had ever happened. Medical professionals are not taught to be medical professionals or healers. They're taught to be sales personnel for the pharmaceutical industry. If you want to be healthy, you must take personal responsibility for your health. And yes, it's a lot of work to go on out and do the research, but if you just sit there in this belief that the pharmacies and doctors and hospitals have your best interests at heart, you are living in a dream world and you will suffer for it. Now, story coming out of Natural Blaze. After all these years, doctors are finally admitting that the annual mammograph is outdated. It doesn't actually find cancers. In fact, it's causing more cancers than it finds. And you ask any woman who's had to go through one of these, they're painful as well. But it makes money. It made money, and that's what made it okay. Right now, in the United States of America, medical errors are the third leading cause of death. You are far more likely to die at the hands of your doctor, nurse, or pharmacist than you are to be killed by a terrorist or an out-of-control police officer or a drunk driver or Russia. Over 251,000 lives end prematurely every year from medical errors. More than respiratory distress, more than accidents, more than strokes, more than Alzheimer's. The cure is clearly worse than the disease. Now, getting on over to the police departments. Up in North Dakota, the face of the dictatorship is on full display. The North Dakota police are completely out of control, trying to crack down on the Dakota Access Pipeline protests. They're threatening reporters with decade-long prison sentences for recording and reporting on the protests. The police are confiscating the tribal drums and tools used by the Native Americans. They're just taking the stuff away. If you're arrested for a misdemeanor, you will be strip searched. This is flat-out abuse and repression, because you dare not stand up to the corporations in the United States of America. By the way, the Taser Corporation is now introducing self-flying drones equipped with tasers to be used on crowd control. It's basically a flying cattle prod. That's what's coming for you under the current government. We're going to take a break for commercials. We've got one more caller we're going to take about toxic products, and we'll be right back. And Aloha America, welcome back to the show. We're going to take one more phone call today. This is Steve in California. Aloha, Steve. Thank you for waiting. What's on your mind?
Well, you talked about the pillows and mattress and stuff like that, and I remember reading something about it. I think even 60 Minutes did something a long time ago on that whole topic. And it turned out it was the fire retardant that they're spraying. I think a lot of this stuff is fire retardant. Maybe it's causing you a problem.
Well, that's one of the problem areas, but a lot of these foams are made out of polyurethane, which is anything with urea in it. You're talking about formaldehyde-based chemicals and stuff. There are synthetic fibers that are stable and inert, like polyester. That's reasonably safe to have as a pillow and a mattress filler. But it's just the idea of the corporate culture that thinks it's perfectly okay to put these products out without regard to whether or not people are going to be safe on them. Now, when NASA first invented memory foam, it was only intended to be used for maybe a week while somebody went to the moon and came on back, and somebody else said, well, we're going to make a permanent bed out of that, and nobody was really thinking about what happens when you're exposed to this stuff over the long term. But apparently memory foam is the worst offender among these materials.
Yeah. I'm just reading here, it said also, you mentioned your wife had some, it sounded like arthritic or neuro deficits. Talked about your neurodevelopmental delays in children and more, cancer risk, birth defects, serious upper respiratory ailments, but they pretty much pointed at the fire retardant.
Well, in the case of Claire's joint pain, it was the formaldehyde precursors used as preservatives in low-end cosmetics and household products. And once we cleaned those out, and we're label readers today, Claire's absolutely fine. It was like a switch had been thrown. In 24 hours, all of her joint pain went away. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And so,
Yeah, it's amazing that where is all these product safety? Where are these people anyway? They just kind of corporate just kind of put stuff out there and nobody does any research. They just said, oh, well, we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, that's basically the attitude. Technically the FDA banned thimerosal, the mercury preservative in vaccines back, I think, in 1999, and it's still out there. They're out there saying, well, okay, you can use up your existing stocks and blah, 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 blah. It's all for sale. All of these government agencies paid by your tax dollars supposedly to take care of you are actually on the side of the corporations they're supposed to be regulating. And that right there is fascism.
Hey, thanks, Michael.
Okay. The boss just said, so crumbling foam is why you are who you are. Well, that's a contributing cause. There's a lot of other reasons I am the way that I am, some of which cannot be discussed in polite company. Alrighty, so we're coming up here on the end of the program. Winter is coming early to Russia. They're already getting frozen waves on the lakes over there, and Hillary's out there saying Putin is hacking the Russian weather to make the global warming people look bad. It's all his fault. Evil, evil, evil. Putin, Putin, Putin. Russia, Russia, Russia. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, stay informed, stay skeptical. Remember, you are the independent media. Working together, we can shout down the talking heads of the corporate media and get the truth out to the American people. Talk to you tomorrow. Aloha, America.